It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills Week 3 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Well, folks, welcome in. Let's get ready for a football game. The Buffalo Bills are at home in Week 3 to host the Jacksonville Jaguars. The game will be played on Monday, September 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. Yes, that is correct, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The NFL is having two Monday night games this week. The Commanders and Bengals starts later, so 7:30, not a normal time for Monday Night Football to start. Make sure you adjust accordingly. The game will be broadcasted on ESPN. Very excited about this broadcast crew. Chris Fowler on the play-by-play. He's awesome. The game analysts are Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick. I like both of them. And then Laura Rutledge, the sideline reporter. This will be the 20th all-time meeting between the Bills and Jaguars. The Bills are 9-10 all-time against Jacksonville. The Jags, of course, have had the Bills' number of late, have won 3 of the last 4, and really the last 2 performances were disasters from the Bills. Last year, London game, 25-20 loss, where the Jags got an extra week to be in London, and the Bills got in late in the week. I feel like they really botched the trip, were sluggish. And then, of course, the 9-6 loss to the Jaguars in 2021, the Urban Meyer Jaguars, literally when the Jaguars were at their worst and the Bills were at their best. So, the Bills are going to want to get this on track against Jacksonville. Of course, the Bills enter this game 2-0. They're one of 9 teams in the NFL that are currently 2-0. Jaguars are 0-2. Loss to the Dolphins in Week 1, 20-17. And they lost last week to the Browns, 18-13. And dating back to last year, Jacksonville's been reeling a bit. They started off great last year, 8-3 to start the year. They finished 9-8. They've lost 7 of their last 8 games, with their lone win coming in Week 17 over the Carolina Panthers. So the Jaguars very much a streaky team under Doug Pederson, and right now they are not able to win football games. And I think that's an important note. This team's going to come in pretty inspired. You can't get to 0-3, right? There's expectations for this Jaguars team in year 3 under Doug Pederson, a very talented operation. So the Bills will have to be mindful of that. Head coach for Jacksonville is Doug Pederson. He's 56 years old. It's his 8th season as an NFL head coach. He was with the Eagles from 2016 to 2020. This is now his 3rd season in Jacksonville. Has a record of 60-55-1 overall, 18-18 so far in Jacksonville. He's an Andy Reid disciple. Quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars is Trevor Lawrence. He's 24 years old, still very young. Number 1 overall pick in 2021 out of Clemson by the Jaguars. 6'6", 220 pounds, has started 52 career games. Jacksonville is 20-32 in those 52 starts, and they're 17-18 under Pederson when Trevor Lawrence starts. So far this season, he's completing 51% of his passes, 26 of 51 for 382 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 82.3. let's dive into some of the metrics here and try to tell the story of Trevor Lawrence and how he's playing so far this year. So far this season, he has an EPA, which is expected points added. It's a metric that I really buy into, of minus 0.09 per dropback. That's 17th in the NFL. He's throwing the ball down the field a ton, which is interesting because you're not seeing a lot of that going on in the NFL. Well, don't tell Jacksonville because they are serving up the deep ball. 21.6% of Trevor Lawrence's throws are deep, which means 20 yards or more down the field. He's the only quarterback in the NFL above 20%. I think number 2 is like Anthony Richardson at 18.9%. Josh Allen, for comparison's sake, is at 14.3%. So Trevor Lawrence, 21.6% deep throws, 11 of his 51 attempts so far this year, 20-plus yards down the field. And he's doing well, 7 of 11 for 212 yards and a touchdown. Yards after catch not happening for Trevor Lawrence. 31.9% of his passing yards came after the catch. That's low. It's 30th in the NFL. By comparison, Josh Allen's at 58.8%. Trevor Lawrence throws to his first read very frequently, 77% of the time. That's Tua Tagovailoa territory. Very high percentage of throws to his first read, which is an interesting contrast because a lot of his throws are down the field and he's not getting a lot of yards after catch. For comparison, Josh Allen's at 57%. His catchable ball percentage, which is an accuracy metric, 74.5%. That's 23rd in the NFL. Josh Allen's at 81%. His drop rate is very high, 9.8%. That's 5th highest in the NFL. And I think throughout the last couple of years, drops have been just killers for Jacksonville. And some of it's that there's a lot of drops, but it's the big moments where there are drops that have really cost Jacksonville. And that seems to have continued so far this season. He's getting pressured on 38% of his dropbacks. That's 13th highest in the NFL. What's interesting to me about that is how quick the pressure is getting to him. The average time to pressure is 2.32 seconds. That's the second fastest time to pressure rate in the NFL. That's very quick. And he's getting sacked, or at least a lot of his pressure is turning into sacks. 30.4% of his pressure results in a sack. That's very high. That's 4th highest in the NFL. So 30.4%. By comparison, Josh Allen, 9% of his pressure he faces turns into a sack. They're running a lot of play action, 27.4% play action rate, 7th highest in the NFL. I'm jealous of that. I think it's important to point out 2 other things with Trevor Lawrence. A very underrated runner. Hasn't run a ton this year, has 3 carries for 53 yards, but he can really move. You kind of look at him, long, gangly frame. He can run. And I think he's been choosy to this point, but that's definitely something in his bag that you have to be mindful of. And then the other thing that I think is important as you talk Trevor Lawrence are fumbles. The dude fumbles all the time. So far for his career, 33 fumbles. He's lost 21 of them. And 21 fumbles lost over the last 3 years are the most in a 3-year stretch for a quarterback since Drew Bledsoe from 2003 to 2005. And it's not just an Urban Meyer thing. I mean, this has been a Doug Pederson thing as well. Under Pederson, entering this season, the last 2 years, 16 of his 21 fumbles have been lost. So the book on Trevor Lawrence, size, athleticism, good arm talent, throwing the ball down the field a ton, not getting much in the way of yards after catch, throwing to his first read very frequently, questionable accuracy, putting the ball into harm's way, victimized by a lot of drops, facing quick pressure, not getting out of it, lots of play action. He can run, and he fumbles the ball a lot. That's the book on Trevor Lawrence. All right, on the other side of it, we're going to break down the rest of this Jacksonville offense, including their personnel and what the keys are for the Buffalo Bills against this Jaguars offense. Be sure to stick with me. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, Got a little something different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon on a market game. All that you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, let's talk more about this Jaguars offense, coordinated by Press Taylor, 36 years old. Yes, he is the brother of Bengals head coach Zach Taylor. This is his third season in Jacksonville. Had some time together with Doug Pederson in Philadelphia. I'll tell you this, Press Taylor, not a popular guy in Jacksonville. A lot of criticism for him and his involvement. Maybe some thoughts on how he's limiting a talented offense. Like I said, not a popular guy. And there's some belief that Doug Pederson could sink his ship by being overly attached to Press Taylor. So how are things going this year? Not good. They scored 17 against Miami. They scored 13 against Cleveland. 27th so far this year in scoring. They pass it 55% compared to running it 45%. They're 23rd in EPA per play on offense, 23rd in EPA per pass, 29th in EPA per rush. Dead last in the NFL in adjusted yards before contact per rushing attempt at 0.94. By comparison, the Bills are third at 2.07. So we got some challenges here with this offense. Not a cohesive unit quite yet. Talented, not playing their best football. Let's talk about this personnel. Their wide receivers. Gabe Davis has been their most targeted receiver to this point. 10 targets in 2 games. I don't need to tell you about Gabe Davis. You know all about him. Brian Thomas Jr., their second most targeted wide receiver. He has 8 targets so far this year. And he's their first-round pick out of LSU. Off to a good start. Some really dynamic plays down the field. And he's got height, weight, and speed. And he's explosive. And a big part of their formula for pushing the ball down the field has been the involvement of Brian Thomas and, of course, the involvement of Gabe Davis. They're really prioritizing pushing the ball vertically to those guys. Now, those guys are new players this year for them. Gabe, a free agent signing. Brian Thomas, a first-round draft pick. The familiar name in this wide receiver core, because they don't have Calvin Ridley anymore, is Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk's had some good years in Jacksonville. He's not off to a good start this year. Been targeted 7 times, 2 catches in 2 games so far. And so I thought, or at least it was my belief going into the season, that Christian Kirk was going to be a heavily featured piece of this offense, and it just hasn't been the case. And he's got a couple of drops already this year. And so I'm sure they're going to look to get him going, but he hasn't yet. Those are the 3 receivers they play. Parker Washington, a slot player, he could factor into the mix, but that's their primary 3. At tight end, Evan Engram, very productive player last year, one of the most targeted players in the NFL at tight end last year. He'll be a game-time decision, and it doesn't feel very hopeful that he's going to play. He was injured during pregame warm-ups last week against Cleveland, missed the game. And based on listening to Doug Pederson so far this week, it doesn't sound like it's a game-time decision, but it doesn't sound very hopeful that he'll play. In his absence, they'll lean into 2 other players, Brenton Strange, who was a second-round pick last year out of Penn State, very physically gifted, hasn't had a lot of volume his way, but I think he's got a bright future. And then Luke Farrell, who's just your classic inline, big-bodied, does everything at a reasonable level type player. Now, they'll run some 12 personnel. This is an 11 personnel, 12 personnel heavy offense. And so far this year, it's leaned much more into 11 personnel, but their second most frequent formation has been 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends. The running backs, their duo is Travis Etienne and Tanks Bigsby. Travis Etienne had a really good season last year. Explosive runner, can catch the ball a little bit. Not super physical, but a guy that they've been able to give some volume to, and he's been productive. The other player here is Tank Bigsby. Had a good game against the Dolphins, had some explosive runs against the Dolphins. You don't necessarily think of Tank Bigsby as a big play back. He's definitely more of a physical between the tackles runner, but he gashed Miami a couple of times. He missed last week against Cleveland with a shoulder injury, but Doug Pederson has indicated they feel pretty good about his status for Monday night. And so I'm interested to see. It sort of feels like they want more and more Tank Bigsby to be part of their equation. We'll see how that plays out. But they're very complementary skill sets in terms of Etienne's more of a slasher, explosive, big play guy. Bigsby's your grinded out type runner, thunder and lightning type package there. Offensive line is interesting. I think they got one weak link and they've got 4 good starters, or at least sufficient level starters. Their left tackle, Cam Robinson's been there for a long time. He's an average starter in my view. Their left guard is Ezra Cleveland, who's a player they traded for last year. They signed him to an extension. Has been a solid starter in the NFL. The name of the game for him is athleticism. Not a very powerful player, but very, very athletic. Their center is Mitch Morse. Heard of that guy? That's their center. The right guard is Brandon Scherf, who I think brings a physical element to this offensive line. I think his best football is behind him, but he's been a very good starter in the NFL. I think he's still a sufficient level starter. But the guy you really want to take advantage of is their right tackle, Anton Harrison. First-round pick last year out of Oklahoma. He's extremely athletic. He's just not playing good football yet. And, maybe that'll come, but he's been really rough to start this season. And so you look at your opportunities with this offensive line, you look right there at that right tackle, Anton Harrison, and, you're hopeful that that's where you can really win some one-on-one battles, or that's a spot where they're going to have to help, right, and take away eligible receivers to help Anton Harrison, and, hopefully that frees up some opportunities for the rest of the Bills' defensive linemen. So what are my keys for the Bills on defense against this Jaguars offense? I have 3 things for you. Number 1 is be ready to adjust. Doug Pederson, I'm questioning his leadership. I'm concerned about him. But if there's anything I'll say about Doug Pederson is that he's creative. And desperate football team here in some ways. I don't think they can get to 0-3. That'd be tough. That's a tough hole to be in. I'm expecting an inspired effort from Jacksonville. They're way better than an 0-2 football team and a team that's lost 7 of their last 8 games. But be ready to adjust, because I think there's going to be some uniqueness about Jacksonville in this game. And when you look at their formula so far this year, which has been the vertical passing game, that's never been a great script against Buffalo. Their defense is designed to take away throws down the field. So come in with the intent of dealing with that, but understand that there's probably going to be some new wrinkles to what they want to do, because it's unlikely that they're going to have a lot of success pushing the ball vertically, because no team really, since Sean McDermott's come to Buffalo, has been able to do that. So anticipate what their counter punches are going to be and be ready to adjust. Number 2 is hunt turnovers. They've only turned the ball over once in 2 games, and it was a catastrophic turnover. Travis Etienne fumble as he's about to score a touchdown to put them up 3 scores late in the third quarter against Miami. But between Trevor Lawrence's fumbling issues, his turnover-worthy throw percentage is extremely high this year. Etienne's not necessarily been a guy that doesn't fumble. Gabe Davis will fumble the ball. They got a rookie player in Brian Thomas that they want to feature in this offense. Kirk's had some drops. Hunt some turnovers. Be aggressive. Rake at that ball. Break on the ball if you get a chance to make a play. Hunt those turnovers. Be aggressive. Number 3, beat up on Anton Harrison. Von Miller's had 2 great games to start the season. Let's make it 3. Great matchup for Von. Probably even better matchup for Greg Rousseau, who I think can overpower Harrison. Harrison's a finesse player. Quickness. Using athleticism. You don't want to deal with 35-inch arms, heavy hands, and a lot of power. Greg Rousseau should be able to play through him at times. So if they're going to give you one-on-ones with Anton Harrison, you got to make them pay. You got to win that matchup. So be ready to adjust, hunt turnovers, and beat up on that right tackle. All right, folks, on the other side of it, let's talk about this Jaguars defense against the Bills offense. Folks, be sure to stick with me. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so that way your lineups stay in play even if one of your guys gets hurt. PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's talk about this Jaguars defense, a very unique defense. Coordinated by Ryan Nielsen, 45 years old. It's his first season in Jacksonville. Was the Falcons defensive coordinator last year. I thought he did a great job with Atlanta for a defense that I thought was underwhelmed or really undermanned when it comes to personnel. I thought they got good results, especially when you think about modest personnel and a bad offense. Falcons offense was terrible last year. So you're not getting that complementary element. So I thought he did well with that. Saints back in 2022, that was a good defense. He's come up under Dennis Allen. And I don't think much of Dennis Allen as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he's terrific. And so I think he's very good. I think Ryan Nielsen has a bright future in the NFL coaching defense. Metrics that matter here, they gave up 20 points to Miami. They gave up 18 to Cleveland. They're 22nd in EPA per play, 24th in EPA per pass play against them, 17th in EPA per rush. So below average pass defense, about average when it comes to rush defense, and slightly below average overall. The thing about the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, and we'll talk about their personnel, they are running man coverage at an unbelievably high rate, way higher than any team in the NFL. 63% man coverage. That was over 70% against Miami in week 1. This is what they want to be. They want to play press man coverage. And they are, which is a very big difference from what the Bills have faced this year. I think the Bills have faced like 33% man coverage. So to give you an idea of just how man coverage heavy this team is, they're leading the NFL in percentage of plays with man coverage at 63%. The next highest is like Denver at like 51%. They also don't blitz that often. 22% blitz rate, 22nd in the NFL. Let's talk about the personnel. At defensive tackle, Roy Robertson Harris, one of their primary down linemen. Physical, right? Not much of a pass rusher, but like a good run defender. Devon Hamilton, same type of thing. And then they have like Jeremiah Ledbetter and a bunch of other rotational players. I think their best players in terms of down defensive tackles, Roy Robertson Harris, Devon Hamilton, and then they'll play a bunch of other guys, but they're all the same type of profile. Long arms, heavy hands, two-gapping style players. Not really penetration style players. They get that from their edge players. This is really a different type of edge duo compared to what the Bills have handled so far this year. They got Joshua Allen Hines. They're, formerly the other Josh Allen. He's changed his name. One of the premier edge rushers in the NFL. Outstanding player. And he's given the Bills some problems, right? In the two most recent games. Travon Walker, the #1 pick 2 years ago, took a big step forward year 1 to year 2. Supremely physically gifted in terms of size, length, athleticism. And then Eric Armstead. They're playing him on the edge, 5 technique type player. Long-time San Francisco 49ers. Again, long arms, heavy hands. He's later in his career, but he's still effective. That's their edge rushing trio. It's a good group. At linebacker, they got a good pair. Foye Olakun and Devin Lloyd. Foye Olakun, rangy player. Has really come into his own. Can really play in coverage and run. Devin Lloyd, first-round pick a couple years ago. his first 2 games this year have been tremendous. Good football players. At corner, they're going to be without their best cornerback, Tyson Campbell, who they just extended to a massive contract. He's on injury reserve. He won't play in this game, which has me wondering if maybe they play a little less man coverage because you feel like his presence on this roster is a big part of why they would want to be that style of defense. We'll see. Ronald Darby is their other starting corner. You know all about Ronald Darby, former Bills second-round pick. Good man coverage player. I think Ronald Darby's had a good career. And lately, he's been more of a kind of a fill-in player. Like, he didn't sign with Baltimore until late into the offseason, like right up against the start of the season. Came in and played pretty well for them. And I think this is a good defense, a good style of defense for him. He's a good corner. And then in place of Tyson Campbell is going to be Monteric Brown. And when I think about Monteric Brown, I think zone coverage. I don't think about a guy that's ideal for mirror and match press coverage. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Definitely more of a depth player. And the slot, Darnell Savage, they signed him over from Green Bay. Was a first-round pick by Green Bay a few years ago. High variance player. I think he's a guy that can make some plays, has some physicality, but he gives and takes away. He gives up plenty in coverage, has plenty of missed tackles. There's just a lot of variance with how he plays, but he's talented, he's athletic, inconsistent. Their safety pair, Andre Cisco and Antonio Johnson. Cisco is a nice player, very good ball skills, size, he's physical as well. I think he's got a lot of upside as a middle of the field defender that can really run and attack the football. Antonio Johnson out of Texas A&M, second-year player, not a ton of experience, later round pick, physical player, played a lot like as a slot defender at Texas A&M. We'll see there. We'll see. He's definitely got some size dynamics that are appealing, but I think he's also got some limitations if you're going to ask him to play, one-on-one with a tight end like Dalton Kincaid. I feel like that'd be a great matchup for the Bills if they're going to give them that look. So still a young player that's trying to sort out who he is in the league. So what are my keys for the Bills on offense against this defense? Number one, the offensive tackles, the Bills' offensive tackles, Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, they have to win. And those guys have been sensational this year. I mean, high-level stuff from both Spencer Brown and Dion Dawkins. This is a different challenge. I mean, you heard me talk about Arizona. I didn't feel like they had starting caliber edge rushers at all. Miami, Jalen Phillips is a good player, but he's still working back from an Achilles. Then they're playing rookies and Emmanuel Ogbah in the other spot. They don't have Bradley Chubb. Miami's not outstanding when it comes to their edge rushers. It's a different ballgame. The Bills have been playing 86% five-man protections. It's one-on-one blocking pretty much always. It's a different challenge. The Bills will have to meet the moment. Spencer Brown, Dion Dawkins, you are a handsomely paid pair of offensive tackles. Show us why. Number two, get ready to beat man coverage. This is a really different style of defense that the Bills are going to face. And that's been one of the questions with the Bills is, do they have receiving talent that can separate from man coverage? I like the Bills' chances with Tyson Campbell out, but your strategy here is just going to be a lot different than what you faced. I like the idea of some tighter alignments. You get some rubs, right? That James Cook touchdown against Miami, the receiving touchdown, the 4th and 3. What happened? You had tight formations. You had some natural rubs. The Bills kind of run this mesh, couple of overs, a sit route on top. The linebacker that was responsible for James Cook got stuck in all of that, wide open. More of that, right? Man coverage beating concepts is what you have to have here. And, you got to look at your receivers and who do you trust to beat man coverage? Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel. Looking for those guys to show up in this game. And then number 3 is attack Monteric Brown. I always do this. Where's Waldo? Who's the guy you go after? Week 1, it was Starling Thomas for Arizona. Week 2, it was Kader Kohu for Miami. This week's it's Monteric Brown. Go after that guy. Whoever he's guarding is going to be a great matchup for you. Test it. Real quick on special teams, their kicker, a rookie, Cam Little. Rookie out of Arkansas, I think a 6th-round pick. So far, he's 3 of 3 on extra points, 3 of 4 on field goals. They're not interested in covering kicks. 1 of 8 kickoffs have been returned, 7 touchbacks and 8 kicks. Their punter's a good one, Logan Cook. He's been there since 2018. He's an excellent NFL punter. Their returner is Devin Duvernay. He's awesome. I think he's one of the best returners in the league. He's got a dense build, and he's got 4.3 speed. Not interested in dealing with that guy at all. Give me all the touchbacks this week as well, and you need good if you have to punt, good directional punting because this guy is lethal. Do not mess with Devin Duvernay. I was begging for the Bills to sign him this offseason, and I wish they did. And he's a guy that gives me concern having to deal with in the return game. So there you have it. Bills, Jaguars, what this matchup looks like, the personnel, keys to success, all for you here today on this episode. We have one more conversation coming before kickoff, which will be my final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills about the injuries, and, of course, my predictions for Monday night. That'll drop, I don't know, maybe Sunday night, maybe early Monday morning, somewhere in that range. Enjoy your stress-free weekend of football. I'm sure you did last week. It's always great going into a weekend knowing that the Bills won or they don't play till Monday, so you can just enjoy all the football that's on TV. And I hope that you enjoy that. I hope that you'll come back. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.